Let's see if this Christian can be honest and not be disingenuous, as he claims that I am disingenuous and I use misconceptions in order to sway people in the direction that I believe and that I focus on and the facts that I talk about, saying that I use books outside of the Bible in order to trick people, so to speak. Now, I rarely listen to or read his commentary, but in this one, it caught my attention simply because of his personal thought process on what I am talking about. Although my claims, my conversation is not for him, you're Christian, but he feels that he has to come to this page and be a warrior for Christ. But I don't block him. So for those who are going to say just block him or why you even pay him attention, because he provides a great opportunity for us to gain understanding in the mind of somebody who is so devout that they will use cognitive dissonance in every aspect in order to not ever come and face the truth of the matter. In his second paragraph, he talks about how if anyone is talking about, any Christian is saying that when when the Euphrates River dries up, that they must not understand Revelation 16, and in thinking that that it's all going to turn into blood. I mean, the river is going to dry up, and that's going to be the bringing of the Antichrist. Well, and the statement that he also made is the fact that he's saying that there will be no Christians at the time of the drying of the Euphrates, that all the Christians will be gone, and then atheists will finally have the world without God that they have always wanted. Atheists don't go around wanting a world without God. Most atheists that I know, most that I've ever listened to, they just want to be left alone with their own belief and not have your belief forced upon them, and not have the laws dictated to them based on your belief and not live in a theocracy. They just want to be left alone. But Revelation 16, in your statement, you're saying that there will be no Christians around. No one will believe in God at the time frame that the chapter 16 of Revelations happened. You're first being disingenuous by not really admitting the fact that Revelations is not a book that was written for today or any time in the future. Revelation was actually written for the people who were living in that first generation after the so-called Jesus existed, because the people of that day believed that Jesus will return before the generation ended, which is what your Jesus said, which in that time frame, a generation meant 40 years. After 40 years passed, the church later rewrote the doctrine to mean a generation being any group of people for however long it takes for revelations to occur, so that they can instill that fear in people. The number 666 is not a number that is geared towards people, but geared towards the beast, but is geared towards Nero. Nero in the Greek is numbered at 666, but in the Latin is 616, which is why in the older versions of the Bible, in the Vulgate, it says 616 and not 666, meaning that it is double downing on the fact that it's talking about Nero and not talking about anyone who is to come in the future. The other aspect of this is you're believing that a rapture will happen. Well, Revelation never talks about a rapture. The rapture is something that you've extrapolated, or that others have extrapolated from the Gospels, when it says that two will be in the field and one will be taken. That's talking about the persecution of Christians during the time frame of the Roman Empire. It is not talking about our present day or any day in the future. Boy, I've been trying to shoot this video over and over again and keep getting interrupted by customers or phone calls, but we're going to continue, I'm going to do it this time, regardless of the interruptions. So there's absolutely nothing that says that Christians won't be around. As a matter of fact, during the whole time frame of Revelations, it is talking about how there will be Christians, that they will refuse to take the mark of the beast, that they will on their right hand and on their forehead, and that they won't be able to buy or trade, and that they will be beheaded, and that the 144,000 that were beheaded and were coming with Jesus, they will later be re-alived, so that they can then reign for 1,000 years with Jesus, and then the Satan will be let out again to hassle and trick the nations. So you are being disingenuous by saying that there will be no Christian and it'll be a godless world at the time frame of Revelation 16. The other part you're talking about is Exodus, when you are saying that they were able to get water by digging along the Nile, and it says it right there in the book. Yes, it does say that all the Egyptians went and dug along the Nile in order to get water to drink, because they could not drink the water from the river. But this in itself creates a contradiction that you may not realize. You see, earlier in Exodus chapter 7, when it talks about the plague of the blood, the plague that turned all the water to blood, it says that it turned it into blood, into blood. Didn't say it turned it into anything else. That all the waters, even in the jars and the vessels and the pots, will be turned to blood. That means that the water that had already been drawn from the river will be turned into blood. Understand, into blood. The reason why I am focusing on into blood, or emphasizing into blood, is the fact that Bible scholars and apologists often say that what actually happened is that the red sediment that normally flows into the Nile River from Ethiopia is that sediment during the fall and early summer, which happens every year during the Nile flooding, made the river look red like blood, and that they dug along the side so that the natural earth will filter out the red sediment, and then thereby they can get this drinking water. They make this claim because it is the only way they can resolve the fact that they were still able to have some sort of water that the Bible is trying to tell you that they got by digging along it. But here is the problem. The problem and the contradiction is the fact that earlier in the chapter, they want you to forget that earlier in the chapter, it literally says that all the water was turned into blood. The water in the pots and the pans and the all that into blood. If the water is blood, no amount of filtering is going to change that water, that blood, into water. Do you understand what I'm saying? That if the river is filled with blood, when you dig along the side of the river, you will still get blood. Blood. I believe that what we have here is that the Bible writers understood and knew that what they were really talking about was a red sediment that looked like blood. And that's why, and they knew that they needed to figure out a way to say that they were still able to get water, because no reasonable person at that time frame, nor today, should be able to say that those animals, that those people would have still lived long enough for the rest of the 7 plagues. Because remember, 7 days goes by before the next plague. So it's not like these plagues happen day after day after day, and then within 4 or 5 days or 7 days or some short period of time, the children of Israel were allowed to leave Egypt. This happened over an extended period of time, enough of a period of time that they knew that no reasonable person of that day would have believed that those animals and those people would have been able to survive without any water whatsoever. But if you turn the water into blood, a reasonable person would be able to understand that no amount of natural filter of the earth would be able to siphon out the blood and water. Is there water in blood? Yes, but it turned it into blood. So, sir, you have only a few options here. Option number 1 is to admit that you are going based on doctrine, as far as no Christians being around during the time frame of Revelation 16. Number 2, you are just totally going to ignore the fact that it is an impossibility for them to dig along the Nile River and get water when all the water was turned to blood, since they said it was into blood and even in the pots and pans. That you are so willing to hold on to this book that you will accept the fact that your God does not understand science, does not understand the natural way of things, and that the writers try to cover this up. So either your God does not understand science, does not understand nature, and is a liar, or the writers are liars and tried to figure this out. Either way, it invalidates your book as the inerrant word of God. So what do you have to say for that? I'm sure you'll have something. So with everything, remember, you have to free yourself to be yourself, because your greatness is non-negotiable. Good journey, good vibrations.